Well, hello, world. Or should I say hello, neighbor? Welcome to Comic Book News. It's been a little while since I've had a live show. Been off having fun with my family, playing with my kids, and going places with my wife, and always in tow is a big stack of comics for the kids to read, for daddy to read, and for everybody to check out. But there is no comic that gets turned to more, at least in my family, than Owly. Oh my gosh, who's Owly? Owly is so cute and adorable. We're going to be talking today to the creator of Owly, Andy Runton. We're going to talk to him about his overnight 20-year rise to success, right? This guy went from self-publishing to indie publishing to the big time. Scholastic Books, in case you don't know, that's the big time for comics now, right? Like, forget your Marvel and your DC. That's nice. But if you want to get paid and if you want to get seen by millions, it's not going to be in the pages of mainstream comics. It's just not. Sorry. Where it is going to happen is in the pages of a Scholastic book, and they're going to throw those things around. They're going to take them around. Literally, they're going to fill a truck full of those things, and they're going to drive them from school to school, and then they're going to hand sell them to the kids at the school. They're going to send them home with a little sheet that they can check off which books they want, and then they get them. Is there a better delivery mechanism for books in general and comics specifically? I don't know that there is. So we're going to talk to Andy, but I don't think this is the right place. I think we need to go somewhere else. I think we need to go not to the Batcave. We need to go to the neighborhood of make-believe, right? And we're going to let's bring in Andy Runton and talk all about, but first, if you haven't already, please consider clicking that subscribe button down there. There's a little button. It says subscribe. Now, if you're already subscribed, you're there. You might click that bell and get notifications when I have new videos and new live streams and stuff. But please consider hitting that subscribe. The lifeblood of this channel is your subscriptions. If you like the video, click like. If you don't like it, hey, click don't like. That's fine. Just maybe, hey, how about some feedback, huh? How about letting me know what I'm doing wrong? Okay, well, let's bring in a guy who's not doing wrong. He's doing right, man, on a regular basis for 20 years. Let's bring in one of my favorite all ages cartoonists, and there aren't many truly all ages cartoonists. Andy Runton. Hey, Andy.
How's it going?
Great.
Oh, and Owly says hi too.
Oh, wait a minute. I've got an Owly Plush too. I've got one here to share.
It's my
unfortunately,
favorite.
I have a real one. I sought it out this year and went on eBay and paid some pretty good dinero.
Yeah.
And then my dog got it right away.
That happened at some of the very first ones, so it's okay. The nose, his little beak will be gone, and the rest of them will probably stay together, but the beak is gone. That actually happened with some of the first prototypes that we had made. My publisher left them on his desk, and he had has a little Westie, and she jumped up. She took those. She destroyed like a couple of them, and these were the first ones that were ever made. And so whenever I would go over to his house, there'd be a really little mangled Owly that she's still playing with.
Who did the prototypes? Didn't you tell me it wasn't wasn't your mom involved?
Yeah, my mom and I did it. We basically, the thing is that, I set up at a lot of conventions, right? And so I wanted kind of like a little mascot just to sit there. And I've loved toys. That was the thing for me as a kid. It was plush toys. I mean, as soon as I saw Dumbo, I wanted the Dumbo toy. As soon as I saw, Robin Hood, I wanted that little fox, and I still have some of those. I mean, these were the older pre, 80s Disney, where things were just kind of a little rough, but I still loved those plush toys to death. And so that was what I always wanted when I loved something. And so I just wanted to try to create one. And we made one, and we were going to make a lot of them, but it took almost an entire month to make one. And so we ended up realizing that we could not sell it for as long as it, I mean, what do you charge? People will only pay a certain price for a toy. And so we had to find a way to make it cheap. Oh, sorry, my chair gave way. We had to find a way to make them cheaper. And we did.
What year was this?
Wow. Let's see. I'm going to say like 2005. No,
that sounds right.
Yeah, 2005. And then we made some more. We made some more over the years. And the last run we made was like 2013. We made a few more because the problem with the toys is kind of like comics, right? But imagine toys take up a huge amount of space in a warehouse.
Yes.
Huge amount of space. And the issue is that each toy costs about $6 to make. And if you were going to make 5,000 of them, which is what we made the first time, you had to basically give them $30,000. And then you sat on 5,000 toys until you sold them. And that's the way publishing works, but you have a distribution system, and people pre-order, and you have certain things like that. And when it comes to toys, it's a very different kind of thing. And not only that, you can have in a very small amount of space, you can have a lot of books. Those toys take up a lot of room. You could only have like 10 maybe with you at a show. And so you're not making that much because you just can't get the volume. Anyways, it was complicated, but we learned a lot making them. I'm glad we did. Still got a few
publisher at that time was Top Shelf, right?
That's right.
And they did the production of this as well. And I believe this was offered through the direct market because I bought them. They disappeared off the shelves of my comic.
That was a way to, and again, that's the whole point of previews, which your viewers probably know, but it's to offset some of that risk of knowing how many to make, because know what the pre-orders are. The problem with the toys was that it takes so long, the lead time, that we had to just guess. We had to guess and take our chances and see what would happen.
But you sold through 5,000 of these things eventually, and
we probably sold about, I don't know the exact numbers, but maybe like we sold that original run of 5,000, and then maybe 3 more. What happened was that the over the course of the next couple of years, that the company that we were using, they were in Taiwan, and a lot of the stuff happened over there with China and everything like that, and some of the other things that were going on. The quality really dived, and we dove, and we didn't really. The problem is we didn't see it until we opened the boxes, and so there would be. You see how his eyes are different. Sometimes it would be 2 eyes the same on one Owly, or he'd be missing a beak, or and so one's upside down, and and the thing is that you don't know that until you're opening the boxes, and then you're like, what do I do with these? So I actually have probably about, I don't know, I'd say about 100, maybe more, that I saved that I thought I could fix, and I still haven't yet, but I've still got it.
Rare side eye variant,
Island of Misfit Toy Owlies is what they are. So yeah.
Well, maybe we're getting ahead of ourselves because we're jumping right into toys, but it's right. You don't get there overnight. You don't get there without putting in a lot of work on comics, right? And cartooning.
That's right.
Let's talk about Owly. Now, when I remember getting Owly, it came out in these small graphic novels from Top Shelf. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure I was in on the first printing of these bad boys, and instantaneous sellout. constant, steady stock reorder for years. Tell me, how were sales out of the gate? Just tell me how were sales on Owly in the top shelf era, and
Right.
maybe you could even start off with what took you, what got you there to that era.
Okay, so I will let me rewind just a little bit so that I can make it like a linear story. But like,
Yeah.
so I always loved drawing, right? I always loved drawing. I always loved picture books and comic strips, Calvin and Hobbes, Peanuts. I loved everything like that. I loved comic books, especially. I got into comic books through GI Joe, through the GI Joe toys in the '80s, and I found a copy of Silent Interlude at a Little Champ convenience store across the street from me in Jacksonville, Florida,
Classic
and probably like
Snake Eyes ish. Oh,
Snake
of
Eyes,
course, the
silent,
connection.
silent, and that it absolutely blew my mind. And the thing was, is that I had no idea that there was a direct market. I mean, this is early '80s. I don't remember when that issue came out, but you can see when that was, and that was me. And like I had to find out what was happening next, and I had no guarantee that it would be on the spinner rack, right? I had no guarantee, and so I had to find a comic book store in Florida. Had to find, and for years I never understood the schedule of comic books. I never understood it. I was really at the mercy of when my mom could take me to the store, because these places were far away from me,
Right.
and I would always get like, oh, I got to get this one and then get the back issues. And sometimes they wouldn't have the back issues, and then you'd have to wait. And at that time, they didn't collect any of those stories in any kind of trade paperback or anything like that. But anyways, it got me hooked on comics because I would just pore over these things. And at the time, I wasn't a very big reader. And so by reading comics, I got to be a reader through reading comics because it was broken up. I understand now that it was broken up in little bits, and it was easier for me to handle it. But what it also did is I started learning the language of comics, and I loved it. I loved that language, and that's something that a lot of people don't think about, but it really is. It's a language, and if you don't learn it as a kid and you're an adult, it's hard to learn that language. There's a story happening in your head as you're reading it, and it's when it flows, like in Silent Interlude and a lot of the other GI Joe comics, when it flows, it is magic. It's like a movie, and so then I
And
got
it's
into
almost where it's ineffably difficult to pull off, because you only notice it when it's not right. Well, like when
That's
you
right.
can't understand what's going on, something's broken. I don't get it. But when you do, it's just so effortlessly flowing that
Right.
that's the experience that a kid gets when they pick up an Owly today.
Right. Well,
Is a natural. There is no question about what's going on. Can you read this to me? Like, this is a book that my 2-year-old can and does read herself.
Well, and the thing is that as a kid, I appreciated that, but I also didn't understand why I liked certain comics more than others. Because it was because of the storytelling, right? It was because of the storytelling and because of all of these things that I didn't really understand. And the thing was, is I actually started trying to make my own comics in ninth grade, and I had a hard time doing it. But there was a kid in my class. His name was Justin. I forget what his last name was, and he drew Batman, but it was a stick figure with just Batman's face, right? So you didn't have to draw the anatomy or anything. And he called him Bat Stick. This was right around the time of the first Tim Burton movie, right? And Batman was all over the place, right? So I saw what he was doing, and so I was like, well, I don't really like Batman, but I like Spider-Man. So I made it my own little guy, and I called him Spider Stick, right? And I started drawing these comics. And the thing is, when you start to create comics, you really understand how difficult it is. It is honestly one of the hardest things ever to do, because you've got so many factors, and it's all got to come out of your fingers onto the page, and
it really is like a series of puzzles, both
it's
for
a puzzle.
the
It really is.
For the creator to create it,
Right.
and is the ultimate puzzle, I think, the hardest. But then they're crafting another puzzle for the reader to unlock, and
Right.
and you can kind of put a slider like on the difficulty level, right, and make
Absolutely.
it. bring it up, or you can bring it down when you need to. That's the art, right, of cartooning. So
That's right.
how did you get there, though? How did
Well,
you get there?
so I basically, that was high school, and I didn't think I could do that for a living. I didn't know anybody who made comics. I didn't know anybody who really made art. And so when I was looking for careers, I found design, and I was like, oh, well, that's art related. And so I ended up going to school to be an industrial designer. That's like product design, right? And at Georgia Tech, which is, I live in Atlanta, so it's a local school. And then
Georgia's great school.
Yeah.
I know friends who went there for engineering.
So I was lucky enough to be in state, and I got they had a scholarship at the time, still do, based on the lottery, and so I didn't have to pay anything for college. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, it was nothing at all. As long as you maintained an A/B average, it was free. It was crazy. This was during the early 90s, and they do it now, but they have a cap because it's gotten so expensive, right? They can only pay so much of what it is.
Sure.
But anyways, so I went through the design program, and I started getting disillusioned as I started doing real jobs with it. I didn't enjoy it. I actually worked at a company called Ryobi Power Tools, which is they make power tools. For a lot of people didn't know them at the time, but you see them now all over the place in Home Depot and things like that. It's actually, though, the interesting thing that a lot of people don't know is Sears, Craftsman, and Ryobi were the same company. And so all of the power tools were the same. They would name them Ryobi, or they would name them Sears, Craftsman. It's the same tools. Anyways, it was this little tiny place in South Carolina that they were made, and that's where I worked for a while. And I was trying to do concepts for all these toys, and they were basically saying, look, your drawings are too cartoony. That's exactly what they told me. It's too cartoon, and cartoony is not a good term in the design world. They were like, all these look like this was, this is prequels or anything. And so imagine, this was a legitimate criticism of my work, is that I was making these they are saber saws. You know what those are? It's like for cutting through drywall and stuff like that. And Sawzall. Yeah, Sawzall. That's the standard one. And then but my boss was like, all these look like Star Wars guns. And I was like, yeah, why not? That's what I want. That's exactly what I was going for. Because, and the funny thing is, you look at them now, that's exactly what they look like.
Who wouldn't want that, right? I mean, why wouldn't you want an aesthetically
I know. Thing? So, but the thing was, is that wasn't where I belonged, right? That just wasn't. And so it was a terrible experience, and so I started doing graphic design, which is more, two-dimensional, and you do it on the computer, and you can pretty much do whatever you want. I did logos, which was fun. And then I got into interface design, which is really about stuff that works, right? So you've got to make something that you design how it works. Yes. And you've got to make it easy to work, right? So the
intuitive work, right?
That's right. And so the thing in design, this is one of the things that they say, and this is true with product design too, is that honestly, if you have to read the manual, the designer messed up, because you really should be able to look at the thing and know exactly how to use it. And you shouldn't have to read the manual. It should be pretty obvious. I mean, this is for basic stuff, right? So,
I mean, there's been a move away from manuals in the software world now since it used to be when I started, you had a whole tech team and tech writer. We had to keep it up to date, screenshots. Right. Now they're just like, if you documents. Need to look at this, you've not created your program correct.
That's right. That's exactly right. And so it was neat, because I was basically able to create all that stuff, but just in two-dimensionally. And so I worked, but the thing is that I always wanted to do comics. I just, I didn't think I could. So I never stopped reading comics. Well, I actually did. Around the 90s, there was a big crossover event in the Marvel Universe called Inferno. I don't know if you remember that, but it was this huge thing. And the upsetting thing is that they actually split the story so that you had to buy every Marvel title to even understand what was going on. You had, and so I bought X-Men and X-Factor and Excalibur, right? But I did not buy Hulk and Iron Man and Spider-Man, and it went through the whole thing. It seems kind of crazy, but if you didn't buy all of those, you could not follow the story. And I got so frustrated that I stopped because I would buy comics and I wouldn't even read them, and I just stopped buying comics. And
That's such a common tale from that era.
it
A
was
crossover
heartbreaking.
burnout. Yeah.
It was heartbreaking because and so then after a while I'd go to the comic book store and I'd be like, I don't even know who these people are. This was something I loved and I couldn't find an entry point. And what actually got me back into comics was Hellboy, because it was a single book.
Yeah.
And it was easy to understand, and I love the design of it. I absolutely love the
That's
design.
what I was going to say. Mignola's is a very graphic design aesthetic.
That's right.
The aesthetic is almost an Owly aesthetic with flat.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And so like I saw that and I was like, this is so compelling. This is great. And so I was still a designer, but I was reading Hellboy, and I started reading some independent comics by Jim Mahfood and Scott Morse and a few little people like that, Scotty Young. And
I never saw the Hellboy connection, but now I see the horns.
Yeah, it's big.
Now.
It's big. Yeah, it's really big. It's really big. You can see it. And so what happened was I got so disillusioned with work. I got so disillusioned, and I was finding myself doing more and more comics, and then I lost my job. And this was right after the big pets.com explosion, like basically.
Yeah. That's
so
when
guess
I bought
what?
a comic book store.
Right. So I'm out of work as a designer, which was like everybody was a designer at that time. Every web designer, every graphic designer was out of work. And I just told myself, instead of getting all these rejections, I'm going to try something. I'm going to try something different. I'm going to try this comics thing. I'm just going to go for it. And
my daughter Maxine,
hey, and she brought Owly.
Yes, we've been looking for it. It's been buried.
Hi, Maxine.
Come here. And this is my other daughter, and my wife is my daughter, Penny. That's her. Back of her
Penny.
Head.
Hello, everybody.
Look over there. Say hi, Andy.
Hi.
All right, now get out of here.
It's great seeing you guys. Thank you for reading Owly and all the support. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Oh, look at Owly.
Yeah.
He's held together pretty good.
Not bad.
Not bad.
I thought Larry got him. No. Oh yeah, Larry got him.
That's okay. That's okay. It's fixable. Oh yeah, I gotcha. That's just a flesh wound. That's okay. Great seeing you guys.
Thank you.
Great seeing you guys. Anyways,
I would apologize for that incredibly cute interruption.
It's perfect. It's absolutely perfect. I was going on, but the whole point was I found independent comics. I decided that's what I wanted to try to do. Yes. And then I tried, and I ended up finding Top Shelf at Dragon Con. I saw these books. I said, that is exactly what I want to do. And I went to a little tiny workshop at Dragon Con that was hosted by two Atlanta people, Brian Stelfreeze and Cully Hamner, who are artists. And
great artists.
Very amazing artists. And one of my design friends actually knew them, and so we got to go hang out with them and everything. But they did a little workshop on comics at Dragon Con. And here was me. I don't know anything about it, right? And I said, I want to try this. I'm going to go to this panel, right? Silly, comic book panels, you don't think they're going to change your life, but this one did. And so they basically said, look, if you're trying to do comics and you show up to a publisher, don't show up with like your epic that you've drawn, because they're not going to read it. That's too much. There's not, and also don't show up with just pencils, and don't show up with just inks or colors. If you want to work in comics, then you need to show that you can tell a story. They said, so either find a story or write your own story, and that is 4 pages long. That's it. 4 pages, and do it. And then when it's bad, do it again and do it again until you get it right. And then take that to somebody, and they'll know what you can do. They can tell what you can do just from that. And so I decided that I wanted to do that, and I was going to show Top Shelf what that was. And so I looked to see the next convention that Top Shelf was going to go to, and it was That was the summer of 2002. 2002, maybe. No, 2001. That was the summer of 2001 when I went to that panel. And or maybe 2002. Anyways, the next convention Top Shelf was going to be to that was close to me was MegaCon in Orlando. And so I decided I was going to drive to MegaCon, which from Atlanta is not close, but close enough that I could drive. And I was going to show them this story. And that's what I did. And I just wanted to get feedback on it. And they really liked it a lot. I showed it to Chris Staros, and he really liked it. And the thing was, is
publisher of probably I would guess you're maybe their second biggest hit, maybe after From Hell by Alan Moore and Eddie Campbell, right?
Well, see, like a lot of that stuff, I didn't even know some of the mainstream stuff that they had. I mean, that's more mainstream. Like, and the thing was that when I went and saw them, that was actually the year, maybe the year before the From Hell movie came out, right? So, you know, but they had an incredibly diverse set of books. So the other thing that they did was that they bought books not on consignment. It's like a subcontract. I forget the word exactly, but they would buy books from creators and then sell them for them and then they would split the profits. And so
like consignment,
kind of like consignment and or sub-distribution or however they describe it. But but the neat thing what that meant was that when you went to a Top Shelf table, you saw a huge selection of independent books from around the world. Really, basically anything they liked, they tried to sell, and based on that, they would gauge the interest and see, because you know the thing about independent publishing is there's no money in it. There's really no money in it. You're lucky if you break even. That's really the way it works. And so so much of trying to get published with them was to minimize the risk to them financially. If they're gonna spend money and publish your book, they need to make that money back, and they need to know they're going to make that money back. And so anyways, right. I didn't know.
Yeah, because in the publishing game, the amount of money that's involved and the lead times and the stuff you have to put up front one bad book deal could destroy a small company like that.
That's right. And has. That's the other thing, is that many times. And the reason why so many books go out of print when they're hot is because the publisher did not want to risk printing that many copies. And because they don't know if they're going to be hot. They use the preview numbers as a guide, but they really don't know. And again, the difference with graphic novels is that in the direct market, books are not returnable, right? If you're a comic book store and you buy 100 copies of X-Men #1, you're stuck with them. Marvel doesn't want those back. You know, you're not going to be able to take those back. And that's kind of the way it is with graphic novels, but Top Shelf kind of didn't want anybody to ever feel that way. So they would always swap books out for retailers that didn't want them. But in the bookstores, books are returnable to the publisher. And so that's what sunk a lot of the manga publishers, was they printed all these books. And then the bookstores were like, these aren't selling. And they just pushed them back to them. And they got to refund them, you know. And anyways, it's weird.
Retailers want returnability, people want it, but it's like you got to walk that line.
You got to walk that line. But when you walk into a bookstore and you see a wall of books, every one of those books is returnable. So there's no risk for the book retailer. I mean, comic book retailer is different, and so that's the thing with.
And for that risk, you know, for that lower risk, they get a smaller profit margin in the bookstore market. Versus the direct market has these trained experts in comics that can invest their time and money, and they are the product experts. So a strong order from the direct market is a signal of a really strong graphic novel product. I think these days the smartest publishers are using that, setting that as a percentage of their initial print run, so that they can service reorders, bookstore channels, other channels as well. But still, that pre-ordered, no money back, kid.
No money back
thing that the direct market is like really drove. There wouldn't be Top Shelf Comics without that deal happening.
No, but so the thing is, so imagine I'm trying to make these comics. So I've got to try to minimize the risk now for my publisher. And I don't know anything about comics. Like I had read Wizard magazine. I had heard about people like, Rob Liefeld being signed by Marvel and stuff like that. I don't know how this works. So like, I asked Chris Staros, like, so what happens? He's like, well, you kind of just keep working, and if you have something to sell, that's great. So what that means is I'm not getting paid at all until I have something I can sell. That's just the way it is. You're not, and so many people don't understand that most comics are not paid for until they are sold, and you're talking about years of work to try to get something done.
And now that's starting to shift too with the Kickstarter
a little
model.
That this was at the time. This was early 2000s, right? So this is at that time, if you can imagine this, if you wanted to buy from Top Shelf, if you wanted to buy comics, you had to call them to give them your credit card number, because there wasn't really any secure way to do credit cards over the internet at that time. It was very low tech, very low tech.
Speaking of low tech, Andy, well, let's keep talking about this, but I want to take us out of this digital realm and into the realm of physical comics. Do you know where we do that on this show? Do you know how we do that thing? It's that thing we call the $1 Million Comics Cam, my friend. Here we go.
Sorry, I didn't catch what the transition. I'm sorry. A little dense.
I'm just roping you in. So I'm going to look at here. This is close to the original format of Owly.
That's right.
I looked all over this thing, and it doesn't say Top Shelf on it.
Let's see. So that is. Wait, it's on the back. It's on the back. Turn it on the back. Oh, you know what it is? That is a very rare version of. I don't even know what that is. It's some kind of library binding that I've never seen before.
Yeah, that's right, Andy. That's how we do it. Only the rarest of Owlies make it into the $1 Million. That's why it's called the $1 Million Comics Cam, for goodness sake.
Right. So this is a like handmade version of an Owly book that I did, right? And so I modeled the real books after this. So this one is actually, it has a spine, but it's all handmade, right? And so this is how Owly started, as these little comics like this. And the whole point was to try to get something that I could sell, that I could give to Top Shelf, that they could sell. And it was a little piece, and I lost money on every single one of these, right? I mean, because they cost like $5 to make, and I'd sell them for $3. That's just the way you do it. Not
counting your labor of hand stapling or whatever.
No, that's not even. I mean, and I printed all these myself on like my inkjet printer and my laser printer. Like that's the way it's done. But the neat thing is what this meant when I gave this to Top Shelf is this was the next step from that 4-page story. It's an actual comic that I made. Right, I designed the cover. I did the interior layout. It's a difficult step that a lot of people. You think that you draw the stuff and you just give it to somebody, and that's true a lot of the time. But when you're an independent person, you have to do it all yourself. And so, like, this is how it started. And I tried to get
that you followed through and did the whole thing yourself, all the typography and everything that had to be done, all the stupid parts that most artists never even want to take the time to learn.
Minimizing risk, right? Because if you are a publisher, you want to know that somebody is going to get stuff done when they say they are, or even has the ability to get it done, right? And so, anyways.
Yeah, timeliness is as important as whatever true genius is or isn't.
I was still very late on a lot of that stuff because I had no understanding of how long a lot of that stuff takes. And again, I'm an army of one, right? That's it. It's just me. It wasn't like there were lots of other people involved. And that's how most of the people at Top Shelf worked, is we all did everything ourselves. And Matt Kent, Jeff Lemire, myself, James Kachalka, Craig Thompson, everybody did everything themselves. And it all kind of came together, and then we had this ability to kind of publish it all together, and it worked pretty well for a while.
Okay, so tell me about the bold choice to forego words, because it's almost counterintuitive. We talked about this a little bit before the show, because you show this to kids, they instantly grok it. They instantly, whether they even can say the alphabet, they can read Owly. And then parents pick it up and they go, no words? I kind of want, to them, comics are the entry gateway drug to real reading, right? Whatever that is.
Right.
And the panel to panel visual literacy that, frankly, no fault of their own, most parents never developed, just because comics were discouraged in earlier generations, right?
That's right. That's kids
stuff.
But
so now there's a push. Now now you've got this guy, and you chose to go with no words. It was a bold choice, or not many words anyway. And this was it a hit out of the gate from the first top shelf graphic novel? That's why take me back to the publishing history there.
Well, I will say about the wordless stuff, one of the reasons that it is wordless is because I didn't feel like I could write words at the time. And so I left them off. I just left them off. And I thought, silly me, I thought, if I take this to a publisher, they'll have somebody add that stuff in, right? Because I had no understanding of how comics worked. And Chris Staros, said, no, these work fine with no words. And then as the stories got more complicated, I realized I needed something to help the story along. And the funny thing is this actually comes from my work at Ryobi, because when they sold power tools, they sold the same tool to America, to all of North America. That means Canada, the US, and Mexico, right? And so you need all three languages on the tool. If you write something that says on, it has to say on in all three languages, or you use a symbol that can mean on. It's like so for one of the projects I worked on was a lawnmower, right? And it was like you press the button that has the rabbit for faster, and you press the button that has the turtle for slower, right?
Oh, okay.
So like that, but that's the kind of thing where like you have to come up with a universal icon that means a lot of stuff. And so I started getting into icons around that time. And then with interface design, it was all about icons for me. I loved icons. I had a Mac, and I loved customizing my Mac and making everything work like that and everything. So when it came to Owly speaking, I just decided to use icons, and this is great. So like there's that one right there, the little flying squirrel shadow says, Wormy, you feeling okay? And Wormy's like, yeah. And but the funny thing is that I love this, these stories. This is exactly how I would, if you're going to tell a story, this is like, if you leave that one up, I could just say like the flying squirrel says, hey, Wormy, do you want to go outside? And Wormy's like, Wormy's confused. That's how I would tell it, right? In words. Now, how you want to represent that, there's a lot of different ways you can represent that, And so I chose to do it this way. There's other ways to do it. The thing that I was also tapping into was the fact that I was really overwhelmed by too many words as a kid. And so I really did this for me, for younger me, right? That's what I was wanting. I wanted something, and I also wanted something that only I could do. And this is what it was. And the thing I didn't think about at the time was that without having words, I was actually creating a barrier for entry for a lot of people that don't understand comics, don't understand how to read them.
This is critical.
Don't take the time. I mean, a lot of people, when they read comics, they read bubble to bubble. That's all they do, and they don't understand.
This is not the readers, mind you. This is the purse string, right? This is the person who has to buy it to get their kid to read. It's a means to an end to them.
That's the other thing. So one of the neat things was that Top Shelf at the time wasn't really a kids publishing company, right? They published mostly to young adults, teenagers, and anybody that loved comics. And it was a very niche, like super cool, everything handmade and bound with recycled paper and attention to detail and quality, like all of these things that aren't mass market appealing things.
Everything that mainstream comics and books are not.
That's right. And so that audience had no problem with Owly at all. That problems, they had no problem with Owly, 20-year-olds, loved it and everything like that. But when it came to getting Owly into libraries, there's still a lot of librarians that would open the book, and one of them did this right in front of me, opened the book, looked at it and said, no words, closed it and put it down. That's it. They don't even give it a second chance. What that means then is that story doesn't get to who I want it to get to. It just doesn't get there. And the same thing was true with Scholastic. We actually tried to get Owly picked up by Scholastic book clubs and book fairs when I was working with Top Shelf. And we got really close to a deal. But they didn't. The buyers for the book clubs and book fairs, when they would show them to the people that would buy the books, they didn't want it. And they said, if this had words, we'd love it because the pictures are great and everything like that. They said, what if you did like Owly chapter books? And if you're familiar with those, they're like little bits of words and then a picture, and little bits of words and a picture. And it's like, no, I'm a comic artist. I love comics. That's what I love this language. I want to do it. And so I couldn't see how I could make it work, and so we had to, that deal just fizzled, and it was really disheartening because that was a huge opportunity to get Owly into the hands of kids.
I would sell to librarians who would come into my store, and they would take even comics that did have words, and they would count the number of words.
Yeah, that's
and
absolutely
decide
true.
that there were not enough words per page because there was some kind of like
recommended. There's a certain amount of, and again, it's a lot of it is just them protecting their jobs, right? Because they want to make it easy to justify that this is helping kids read. If there's no words, it's not going to help kids read. In their mind, it's not going to help kids read. Now, I know, and that comics, when you read comics, you get to understand the progression of things. You understand stories. You're looking at, there's so much you're learning. They're not seeing that. And so I just stayed with the wordless stuff for a few more years. And I got a book deal around 2007, 8, 9 for the 2 children's books that are there, the Bright Lights and Starry Nights and the Friends All Flutter. And I had an amazing editor that I was working with, and she loved Owly. She loved the wordless stuff. And while I was starting on Friends All Flutter, I had it all penciled out. I was getting ready to finish it, and she left Simon & Schuster, who was that company. She left, and so Owly got pushed around to a lot of different editors, and eventually found somebody who I've heard is very nice and wonderful, but did not want to publish Owly and was kind of stuck with it. And I had to basically, those 2 books were me. I had to fight for everything I did with those books. And they were originally going to be 48 pages, and they got cut down to 32 pages, I think is what it is. And so sometimes I feel like the storytelling suffered because they were truncated, they were edited down. But I'm still really happy with those. And what that actually helped me do was to color Owly for the first time, because it had been in black and white. And the reason it had been in black and white is for cost. When Top Shelf was printing books, there was no way we could afford color, because at the time, color was so expensive unless you printed massive amounts of books. Now it's gotten down to the point where that's not the case. But print on demand stuff wasn't available at the time when I was printing Owly. And so the stuff was printed on a printing press, like, in Canada, and shipped to America, and black and white was all we had to deal with. And that's why I did everything in black and white. And that's why the comic books were in black and white, which was another barrier to entry for kids, because even though they love manga, it's just like turning on the Munsters in black and white for a kid these days. They're just not they're gonna be like, what is this show?
Well, I would say that's like another barrier that's almost artificially put there by parents thinking my kids won't like it in black and white or whatever, because kids will read Peanuts and Calvin and Hobbes. They got no problem with that.
Again, that is exactly right. So like, imagine, so we did Owly free Owly was one of the first free comic books that we did. Like, and again, just to highlight the economics of this, I created a 32-page story for Owly free comic book day, and I didn't get paid anything for that. Right. So I mean, that's and I did all the design and everything.
By the way, I'm looking at one of your.
See, that one was one that we did. Eventually, I got some help from James and Christian Slade there, who did Corgi, and so we split it up so that I didn't have to do the whole story, which is great. Again, not getting paid, right? But it's black and white. By the way,
I was just talking to. It was Free Comic Book Day yesterday.
Yes.
Saturday.
Saturday. Mm-hmm. Saturday.
And I was looking at. I wrote an email to Ed Pisker, who's been a guest on this show before. He's a famous cartoonist.
I do know Ed. Yes.
And I told him that his Red Room comic was probably the best Free Comic Book Day single package I had ever read. And I was trying to think of which was better or as good. And I'm going to say, not just to pander to you, Andy, but the Owly Free Comic Book Days were fantastic, full, thick comics, not just an advertisement. And then they brought the kids back in, and then I had stacks of Owly books to sell them.
We would print tons of those, and it was amazing. The first Owly Free Comic Book Day book, we actually sold 70,000 of those to stores. Now, the stores had to buy those, right? But it really only covered the printing and stuff like that. But that's a huge number. So keep in mind, the first Owly graphic novel and most independent comics, when they are printed, the number is around 3,000. That is the number, right? Owly sold about 5,000. This was the first printing of it, right? And then subsequently more and more and more. And eventually over 10 years, I sold about 120,000 graphic novels. I don't know exactly. This is part of the issue with working for a small publisher, is I don't have the exact accounting, but I can tell you that I was paid for 120,000 of the graphic novels.
But you don't have any reason to doubt Top Shelf's integrity, or no, this was not Top Shelf. Oh, this was Top Shelf. You have some thoughts on that.
Well, I don't know, but one thing I will say is that I was very good friends with Chris, and basically we are not friends anymore, and it's heartbreaking. But what happened was, it was when I got all done. After a couple of years, I started looking at all my royalty statements, and I started kind of putting in the numbers into graphs and things like that. And one year, actually a couple of years there, certain Owly books, I had no sales for certain Owly books. And I really don't see how that was possible, to not sell any of a particular Owly book for an entire year. I just don't see it. And so some of that stuff, it's just, it's a real shame. But the problem is that I'm sadly not the only person that had issues with that. And that is why you will see it's difficult to talk about for a lot of creators that were with Top Shelf at the time. It's hard.
I remember Stars used to bring big stacks of stuff and sell it at cons. I mean, humongous stacks of stuff.
Right. Right.
Including stuff that you can only get at the cons, like special hardcover editions that did not exist outside of that, and things like that.
The conventions were were what Top Shelf lived on, basically. But we didn't find out till later that any books that were sold at conventions, the artist didn't get any royalties on any books that were sold at conventions. And so
that was in your contract.
The thing is, that was a lot of that stuff was just kind of understood. We only had like a 2-page contract.
Those are considered promotional or something like that,
and see, again, this gets into the gray area of a lot of that stuff. But the problem is that when everybody's friends and everything like that, there's a lot of trust. There's a lot of trust in that, and I mean, again, for something like Free Comic Book Day, right? Like, not doing all of this stuff and spending all of this time to promote. I'm promoting Owly, but I'm also helping the publisher, right? And to not be compensated for any of that is really hard. Is really hard. And at the time, I was hungry and I loved it. But it's something that you'll see with a lot of comics, is that people do a lot of work and somebody else gets paid for it, and that's
a tough road to hoe, man. When you're selling 100,000, hundreds of thousands of copies,
right?
And you don't have a Johnny Depp movie backing up your book.
No,
you got your pencil.
Yeah, that's it. And you're living check to check, and you're trying to do everything you can, and you do it because you love it. But at the same time, in hindsight, you look back and you say, wow, it just doesn't feel right. And when you would try to talk about it, the door would close, and that's hard. Hi, Libby.
So you needed to get paid.
Well, it wasn't that. It wasn't about getting paid. So I mean, you got to understand. So like 100 let's break that out. So 120,000 graphic novels over 10 years. I got $1 per graphic novel. So it's $120,000 divided by 10 years. That's not a lot of money. That's not a lot of money.
McDonald's part-time money.
No, that's not McDonald's money. And so what I would do is, if you ever saw me at conventions, I'd be selling original art. I would be selling prints. I would be selling, one year I went to like 26 different conventions and tried that life that I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't travel and just draw what everybody else wanted me to draw all the time. I mean, you can make good money at that, but not when you're selling sketches for certain amounts of money. And again, I'm selling to kids, right? Kids don't have money to buy $500 pieces of artwork. I'm giving them a lot of stuff for free. It was hard. It was really hard to do that. And I loved it. Yeah. That's some of my older design stuff. And that was the neat thing, is I actually did that was a poster for the American Library Association. So Owly was getting some good recognition. But
we got that generation of librarians in there that fully
that's the difference. That's the difference, is that we started getting good librarian interest as younger librarians started coming in. The librarians that were Top Shelf fans, librarians that loved what we were doing.
That read manga and read all kinds of comics and knew that the challenge is, you get a kid reading a book, just putting the book in their hand and turning the pages. That's step one, right? It's not learn the alphabet and whatever. It's like, give them something that they cannot take their eyes off of.
That's right.
And that's what Owly is, man. Like, my kids are legit. And let me say this. Let me burst this bubble of Love Fest right now. And let me just say that nothing annoys me more than when my kids want me to read Owly, because it's so much more work.
It's a lot of work.
Owly to a kid.
It's a lot of work.
Voices, I'm decrypting pictograms,
The only thing that you can hope is that they can kind of take over. But it is, and again, all of that stuff was happening in my mind. So I wasn't experiencing it until I started doing things like school visits and library visits and talking to kids. But as well as I do, that the clientele at a traditional comic book shop is not the youngest kids. It's just not. You will see kids, but that's not who most of the comics are catering to. And so
none of them, almost none of them are. I went to a comic book store in my own hometown and I said, "You got a kids section?" He goes, "Yeah, it's the top right corner of that shelf up there."
Right.
And I go, "Man, you must have some really tall kids that come into
Scrooge
this
McDuck, and you'll have things in there that basically they like. And the one thing is that there's a lot of comic book stores that are amazing. They're absolutely breathtaking, and they get it.
There are some.
They get it. They get it, but it's not that. It's when your income depends on how many comic book stores there are that really get what you do and will give your books a chance. I mean, this is a interesting little story from when Owly first launched, right? So this was 2003. I don't know if you're familiar with the Baltimore Comic Con, but
sure.
Diamond was based in, or is based, I don't even know anymore, in Baltimore. And so they had a retailer summit that they would have at Baltimore around the same time as the convention.
I went to it all the time, yeah.
Right. And so what a lot of the stuff that was geared towards was really, if you came, they would tell you about all the stuff that was coming out. All the publishers would get up and talk. And you would also get exclusives that you could sell at your store. That was one of the big draws, right? There would be like this Jim Lee retailer summit exclusive comic that only 10 were made or something like that, right? But
I must have been there at that one.
You probably were. So what they have though is they have a little tiny convention at that retailer summit. And so we were set up and we were going to sell Owly books. We quickly realized that nobody wanted to buy it. They just wanted it for free, right? So we just decided we were going to give away all of these Owly graphic novels, right? Wow. And there was a guy that came by and he said, "Andy, I want you to know I really believe in this book." And it was somebody I'd seen at conventions. He was a retailer. Not to call him out, I'm not going to say his name, but he said, "You know what? I really believe in Owly, and so with the Diamond order, I'm going to go deep on Owly. I'm really going all in. I'm buying 2 copies." And he was not saying it ironically or like jokingly. That to him was a huge investment in Owly. And I understand, right? Because you have to buy Owly for $5 or $4.50 or whatever it was, and you sell it for $10. But that's $9 that you're investing in Owly, whereas comic books, you're buying a lot of them. You could get a lot of comics for the price of that. But the point is that that's what we were dealing with. And then there was a local comic book retailer that's right down the street from me that was at the retailer summit. I gave them a comic. I talked to them about it. What's that?
Coliseum of Comics?
No. This is in Atlanta. This is in North Atlanta. So this is not, and when
Dr. No.
No. That's a good one.
Criminal Records.
Nope, not criminal.
Oxford.
Nope, not Oxford. Nope, not Oxford.
I know these guys.
That's good. You're going good. You're almost there. But the point is that I went into that store and they were selling that book that I gave them for free. Like that. But that's not it. It was bagged. It was bagged and taped. There is no way that anybody could even see that it was signed. There was no way that anybody could even see what was inside.
And no offense, Andy, who cares about a signed Owly, right? A kid just wants to read Owly.
No, that's the whole point, is that I don't care about the sign. The whole point was that it was taped closed, and there was no, I mean, we're not talking about when you try to wrap up an odd graphic novel, there's like 6-7 pieces of tape on there. You're not going to get that thing open in the store. You're just not. And again, so that's what I was dealing with trying to sell Owly. And the hope was that we would make these children's books, and the children's books from Simon Schuster would ignite the sales of the graphic novels, and they would all play off of each other and stuff like that. But when my editor left and they kind of lost interest in Owly, they barely promoted the books, and it was hard. And I got an advance for those. So I got, that's a neat thing. I can talk about that. So I think I
got. Tell me about the numbers too. How did they sell?
You know that I'd have to double check, but they haven't sold through, which means they have not made up what they paid me to make them yet. So the way it worked was I got, I think it was a $40,000 advance, but that's not the way it works. You get like $10,000 up front, and then you get 5,000 with the completion of each like partway book of the book, and then at the end you get the other 10,000 or whatever's left. And so that seemed like a great thing. It was only going to take a couple years to do it, like 2 years, $40,000 compared to what I was making. That was great.
Making double that 10
it
grand
was,
wage.
yeah, it was like, this is great. I bought a new computer and everything like that, and but it dragged out because that editor left. That process dragged out for 5 years. So suddenly that advance that I was banking on, it was spread out over that time, and so it got really tough, and it really turned me off of making children's books and working with editors. And but the difference is I did not have an agent at the time. I didn't have an agent, and the point of an agent when you're a writer or an author is that you can cuss them out, you can do everything to them, and then they go and they talk to the editor, and they're the go-between, right? And what was supposed to happen with the picture books was that Chris was technically, I was still under contract with Top Shelf when I made those books, so they got a percent of the advance and everything like that, and for that percentage Chris was supposed to act as my agent, and he really didn't do anything. And so I felt completely alone, and that process was what kind of soured our relationship. And so when those two books were done, I decided that it was right around the time, this was like 2012, my contract was just about up with Top Shelf. I was going to Kickstarter was just starting out, and I was like, I'm going to do my next book. And I'm good friends with Ryan North, who is an author, and he made a lot of money on his first Kickstarter book. And I was like, I know how to self-publish. I can do this. I'm going to do this. And so I left Top Shelf with the intention of doing Kickstarter. And then I ended up getting a divorce at the time. And my beloved dog passed away. And I was crushed. And it took me about 2 years to really want to do something again, to really want to work on Owly again. And well, I mean, it didn't take me 2 years. It took me 2 years to have something that I was ready to show. And by that point,
you had that fat stack of 40 grand to
yeah, of course, all that, and that's the other thing, is all that money, of course, is long gone, right?
Yeah.
And I'm trying to figure out what I want to do with it. The other thing is, because my relationship with Top Shelf soured when I didn't renew my contract, they basically stopped printing Owly completely and didn't want to print it. And the other thing that happened, and I didn't know this, was that they wanted me to renew my contract, and I said I didn't really want to do that. And I know it's a sad story, Libby. That's my friend Libby. I didn't want to renew my contract because I we weren't friends anymore. And when I decided not to renew, the next, I don't know if it was like 3 days or something like that, they announced that they had sold Top Shelf to IDW. So it was a really weird, and I didn't know anything about that. They didn't tell me about that. They didn't say, hey, we're going to sign with somebody that's going to help us do other things. We're going to do, it was like, I was kind of shut out of that whole process. And so I don't know if I would have signed, but I really hope that it would work out differently, because I loved what I had done. But what it meant was that I retained all the rights to Owly, and basically everything reverted to me.
Well, so that's what I was going to ask. At least, compared to so many other publishers, I know that Top Shelf respects their creator ownership.
That is the one thing, because of the way the contract is written, is that after a certain point, this stuff reverts. And so
Which is amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, pioneered by the likes of like Bill Shannis at Pacific Comics, and
Right.
still not the industry standard. Still not. You know, nobody has full ownership to their own rights. Or if they do, like you might have had the ownership to Owly, but it's like, oh, you gave up the plush rights, right? Or whatever, the sweetest plum is going to go to somebody else. But man, you own that. You're poised in such a great position now. And so
right.
All of this happens, and then
so all that happens, and then I'm still kind of lost. I have a story that I really want to tell, and I was trying. I wasn't sure what I was going to do. I still was thinking I was going to self-publish it, and what happened is I ended up going to a signing at in Athens, Georgia, with my friend Ben Hatke, who's another cartoonist, and he's published by First Second books, and like, keep in mind, I'm used to doing all of these road appearances, and if you ever see a cartoonist at a convention, they have their suitcases there. Their suitcases are full of books that they took with them. You know what I mean? It's a very low tech situation, right? So I get to Athens, and here is Ben, and somebody is there helping him, and they unload these boxes of books that were shipped by his publisher to the bookstore for his signing, and he has a driver that's going to take him to the airport for his next thing. And
next
Ben's
thing you know, you're going to tell me they bought him lunch too.
They took us out, and like I went with them, and they paid for my lunch, and it was like, and Ben's not like big time, he's totally down to earth and everything like that. But this is just that's the standard with book publishers, right? That's the lowest. And when I saw that, I was like, wow, that's a lot easier than trying to lug all these books around. It wasn't just that. It was the idea of, what am I going to do with these books? How am I going to ship them out? How am I going to handle all this stuff? I knew that I could sell
to understand why someone might be willing to give up a little creative control, maybe, or whatever for.
I knew that I could sell to comic book stores. I knew that I could do that. I knew I have enough relationships with comic book owners. I knew I could do that. When it came to schools, when it came to bookstores, I had no idea what to do. And so I had to make a choice.
That's where the biggest potential for Owly is, right?
Well, I could have just stayed small and just said, you know what, I'm just going to try to do this by myself. And again, use my laser printer and inkjet printer and make these things. But what happened was I ended up trying to find an agent, and I sent out a few feelers, and my friend, Colleen Venable, her agent at the time is a guy named Barry Goldblatt. And that's my agent now. And what ended up happening
what an agent name, by the way.
It's cool. But what worked was that Barry read Owly to his son when he was little. And so there was this personal connection. There was a personal connection. And it was like, he believed that there was more opportunities for Owly. And that was the missing piece. And, I had tried other agents, and I had, they had really dashed my hopes, but Barry came through, and we ended up sending out Owly feelers, and honestly, everybody passed on Owly. Nobody wanted it because there's too much. There's 5 books. Remember what I told you about the 4-page story and like the beginnings? That's what publishers want. They want something that they can kind of get in on the ground floor and just go with. Fortunately, remember I mentioned that thing about Scholastic and the book clubs and book fairs that we tried to do in the distant past. I had gotten to be friends with David Saylor at Scholastic, who I had always just seen him I had a contract deal with Top Shelf. I wasn't like asking him ever for a job. And I think that's what made running into him always fun, because there was no pressure from him. It's like I don't know. It's like somebody when you're married or something like that. It's no pressure. We're just friends. And it's,
you didn't have some hidden agenda like every other schmuck.
I didn't have a hidden agenda. He was just a fan, and I loved what he did, and we talked about stuff. And And it was I would just see him at San Diego. I would see him in New York. I would see him little places. And it was really cool. And so he was the guy that ended up championing Owly. And, but again, he wasn't sure that Scholastic wanted Owly. And so he said, what if we took Owly and we kept the books the way they are, but we tried to do something new where Owly kind of teaches kids things. And I was like, oh, okay, I can see that. Mr. Rogers and everything like that, like here's Owly. And they become almost like books about the weather, books about, insects, and, Owly and Wormy are telling everybody about it.
Yeah.
And he said, what if there's words? And I said, well, I don't really want that, but I understand these are complex things that we're going to be trying to talk about. And I said, what if Owly doesn't talk in words, but everybody else can talk in words? And I said, and then maybe Wormy can talk in both symbols and words. And the idea was that to treat Owly's language as a real language, right?
Yeah.
And it's almost like it's not Spanish, it's not French, it's Owly's language, right? And they really liked that idea. And so we tried that. I did like a little 4-page test.
Yeah.
And I sent it to them, and I waited a year and hadn't heard anything back from David. And at that point, I was just kind of heartbroken, like this isn't working out. Again, I'm not getting paid during all of this time, right? I'm doing odd web design jobs and, logos and, graphic design stuff. And I'm working on my Owly story, but I'm not getting paid for any of that stuff. And so basically David came back and said, well, they don't really like the teaching stuff with Owly. But what we've decided to do is we're just going to reprint all the books, and we're going to bring Owly into Scholastic, and he's going to be part of the family. And I just was blown away by it. But the only condition was that there needed to be some words in the stories, because if there weren't going to be words, the book clubs and book fairs would not be able to sell Owly. And they gave me that
legally there were restrictions.
No. Again, it was that barrier thing. It was the barrier thing of basically they have done wordless books in the past. Nice. And they win awards. They win all the awards. They're great, but they don't sell. And the thing is that I'm not talking about millions of copies, right? We're talking about like they wouldn't sell them. The kids just wouldn't buy them. The parents wouldn't buy them for the kids. Again,
yes, that's what it is. Let's break it down right there. It is that parent barrier, right? Because the kid doesn't care.
Well, I think the thing is that it's a barrier for the parents. And I don't think it's a monetary barrier or anything like that. I don't think it's a learning barrier. I think it's the language of comics. I think when they look at a comic book, again, first of all, they think it's simple. And second of all, they think it's just like a video game, right? It's meaningless. It has no value. And I think when you add words to it, something flips in the mind, and it's just like, this is it. And so it was heartbreaking for me,
because frankly, I think they see comics as or things as a means to an end. A comic is not a piece of art, especially when they go to these Scholastic book fairs. Sometimes there's not even an author on the book. Like, it's just a property. Here's Dora the Explorer in her generic adventures in no one's style. Right. So to a parent, it's like, this is a thing you buy your kids to get them to read real books someday.
That's right. And again, that's the thing, right? Real books, real books. And when we grew up, it was like any book that had too many pictures was considered childish, right? Yeah. That's just the way it was. It was like, are you going to read adult books? Are you ever going to read adult books? And it was like, for somebody like me who was really afraid of books, because I probably have some kind of reading disability that was undiagnosed at the time, because nobody did that. But when I would read stuff, it would just get overwhelming. I just couldn't do it. I would reread the same thing over and over. And what it ends up being is you feel, number one, you feel stupid. And number two, you get incredibly frustrated. And number three, you don't learn anything. And I really owe my education and everything to comics that taught me how to read and taught me how to break things up. And I realized that as much as I wanted, hello, Sergio, as much as I want, so what I realized was I needed to bring that part into the books too, that part of Andy that learned how to read through comics as well. And so I came up with a system. Again, like I said, treat Owly. Owly only speaks in symbols, just like before. But whenever Wormy speaks or the other characters speak, they speak in both English and whatever. And what that also allows to happen is that Owly has been translated into French. And so those words get switched to French. And I had to make my own font because I just hand did everything in the past. But now I had to keep it as a font so that they could change the words easily.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
But anyways,
I mean, so that's amazing to me. The pictographic language, I think, is a great idea to keep that part of it and isolate it even to Owly.
Right.
It adds sort of an otherness to Owly and whatever. But what I want to say is in your design choices for Owly, I'm just going to say the bigger the eyes, the more you're going to identify, right? So the only character you can identify more with than Owly is like a giant eyeball. Or
I don't,
like
the funny thing is that's just the way I like drawing him. And this is something, so I talk about this sometimes, but I've got some of the examples here of like, so Owly comes from when I was in college, actually, when I was frustrated as a design student trying to do stuff. And I lived at home because I couldn't afford to live on campus. And again, my tuition was free. And but what that meant was I was pulling all-nighters all the time working on design projects. And my mom would be like, do you need to get up? What's happening? And so I started leaving her these little notes. And this is one of them right here. Let's see if it'll focus on it.
ISO you. Hang on a second. There we go. Pull back a little bit.
Yeah,
better. Perfect.
So this is Owly. So this is like drawn in like 1996 or so, like that. But he looks pretty similar. But see, that's me. I need to get up around 1. But like, check this out. Like, I actually found this one. This is the first appearance of Wormy in a. There you go. It says introducing Wormy. I don't know if you could see that, but like his first appearance was on this little Post-it note.
Sweet.
So, but
I might have got a trivia question in my.
I know. So, but anyway, so I did. And what happened was I started loving drawing this little owl on these notes to the point that it was teaching me how to draw comics because I started penciling them and inking them and everything like that. And this is all during during college when I considered it just something but look, clearly I always wanted to do that. It was there the whole time. So,
well, and the lack of anatomy too is not like necessarily a bonus in being able to convey emotions and thoughts and stuff without words. So like, it's a challenge. It's a design challenge on top of everything.
The simpler characters are actually the hardest to draw. And a lot of people think that they're the easiest, but you've got to pare it down to just the essentials. And but the other, exactly. Just like that.
Talk about some of your influences in comics.
Sure.
So you mentioned G.I. Joe. I guess it was that Larry Hama's issue.
Yeah, Larry Hama. I got to meet him, and I couldn't even talk. It was terrible. But because
I go silent comics, I think of Henry in the comics. I think of, I don't know, maybe Nancy.
Well, like what the big thing for me was Snoopy and Woodstock, right? Because Snoopy would have thought bubbles, but a lot of the time there'd be no words, and I loved it. But again, with somebody who had trouble reading, right? Every comic is a silent comic because you don't look at the words, and so, but I read Mad Magazine, and I would try to draw like that, and I couldn't. That was a thing. One of my biggest influences, though, was the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the early ones, the black and white ones. And I even got, it's so cool, but like I got to, one of my favorite artists is Eric Talbot from the early turtles, and
Yes.
this is on that special paper that they used to make the comics. That I don't know if you're familiar with this, but the black and white
No.
Turtles comics, they had this paper that when you used a certain chemical on it, it would make cross lines this way, and if you used a
Oh,
different
okay.
chemical, it would make cross lines this way. And
I
it's
didn't.
called Duo Shade. They don't make it anymore. They don't make
Yeah,
it
I've
anymore.
heard.
And he has a little bit of it, and he'll do commissions sometimes. And that was, but
Wow.
that's one of the neat things. But like that is the kind of stuff where like suddenly I could draw these characters because they were simple and they were design based. And I don't mean simple. I mean like, you know, just the way iconic is the word. And I loved that design. When it came to a human anatomy, I would lose interest. I can draw birds and animals all day long, but when it comes to humans, I just lose interest. And so,
No, no nature
yeah,
boy.
no, I couldn't do it. And so like, I actually signed up. This is terrible. When I lost my job and I wanted to do comics, I signed up for a correspondence course with the Kubert School. I don't know if you've seen those. They basically had these ads in Wizard magazine where you could
Yeah, of
you could
course.
pay for this, and I got the thing and I got the pens and everything like that. And the first lesson is like draw these horses and cowboys, and I was just like, no, I can't do it. And I put it off, and I never turned anything in, and I basically lost it. I still have certain things like the T-square that came with the course
Does that have a
and
Kubert
stuff
School
like that.
logo on the
Yeah,
T-square?
yeah.
Show me that again, please.
There it is right there.
Yes.
It
It's got
came
a
with
Joe head.
no, it actually says Joe Kubert World of Cartooning.
Oh, dude. I got to get one of those.
Anyways, no, I forget how
Oops.
much it was. It
Sorry.
wasn't cheap. I think it was probably like, I don't know, $300 for that course. And then I
Everything I
didn't even
understand
turn
was
anything in.
it's a pretty good school and a pretty good course
I know people
of
that went there. I know people that went there, and they're amazing cartoonists. The thing is I was in Atlanta. I had no money, and I thought I could try to draw comics. But that course made me, and that course and how to draw comics the Marvel way really messed me up
oh
because
man.
it's just too much. It's too much. I couldn't get through that, and so I don't ever recommend those books because they're too much. They're too much.
That,
Just draw what you
that is
want to
an
draw.
underrated book. The How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way, though, is underrated just in terms of its sheer, like, it is a really good book on drawing
It's really
dynamic
good, but
comics.
you've gotta really be advanced and you've gotta have a certain mindset. They actually made a video tape of that book. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's really, it's got Stan Lee in it, and it's super over the top, but you can actually see them draw and you know, in the era before YouTube, watching somebody draw comics was pretty cool.
Oh, yeah. Few and far between. Now it's any schmuck can have a
Oh
show
yeah, you
about
can.
comics.
But
Now,
I mean,
as
yeah,
evident.
who would you see? You'd see somebody on like the Magical World of Disney, like maybe doing something, but that's it, you know?
Never on comics. You get a cartoonist like
Right,
cartoons and
right.
maybe
Animators,
once
you'd
in a while
find
you get a
animators,
Garfield or a
right?
comic strip cartoonist, but until like Rob Liefeld's Levi's commercial, I
Right.
don't remember seeing
Yeah, but I
much.
mean, if you ever saw a cartoonist do something on TV, they would be doing quick sketches. They wouldn't be penciling and inking.
Okay, right. Yes, true.
They wouldn't be
It'd
doing
be
that.
like, yeah, here's how you draw Spider-Man,
That's right.
right?
Boom, 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 like with a big Sharpie, right? And it's like,
Spidey's got big
no,
eyes, he's got and whatever, but nothing about storytelling, panel to panel progression, etc.
it's
Yeah, so
complicated.
well, you grokked it, Andy. So tell me, what comics are you yourself reading like now? What is Andy into?
I don't read that many comics, and the sad thing is every cartoonist that you find is pretty much the same way. After we start making them, it is really hard to read them.
Yeah,
I will read the ones by my friends.
yeah.
I will read the ones that like I really love the stories, but it's such a weird thing. It's almost like asking a musician who their favorite musicians are, you know? It's like when you start making it yourself, you look at things, but it's hard for me to read stuff. I still pick up some things. I still pick up Hellboy and a few things like that. I mean, there are some
That
comics
counts.
I love. I'm trying to think of
Like, what's the most recent comic you bought? A graphic novel or comic? Doesn't matter.
I'm trying to think.
I'm trying to think what would be an Andy Runton. What would I pick for Andy that's come out recently? That's a tough one.
I bought some Hilda comics, but that's I don't know if you're familiar with Hilda, but it's amazing.
Okay, I got one for you. I think it's called Mr. Invincible. It might be Mr. Incredible. It was up for an Eisner this year. And it was Magnetic Press, who I interviewed, publishes it. It is a European comic, and it is, I believe, mostly silent and has these really amazing things where, like, the character's superpower, if you will, is to be able to, like, step outside of the panels and move into other panels.
That's
so, like,
really cool.
every strip is a gag like that. That's
really cool.
I don't know. That's fun.
Well, the thing is that I am totally blanking on the ones I have bought, so I will add it in the comments. How about that? I will add it in the comments, and I'll be able to link to the people, because I'm, I've got some that I've read. My mind is just not there right now.
Okay.
So.
And Andy, maybe you can come back to the show
sometime. I would love to come back. Do you have it? Is there anything I missed there? I will say. I want to know.
We're not done, but I want to know what's next. What's the publishing schedule, and where do we find your stuff? And give me the plugs.
So I have done now 3 books from Scholastic. You showed them. The 4th one is done, and it comes out in December, I think. December 1st. I think that is Owly 4, Time to Be Brave. And I really love the way that one came out. That's the one about the little possum, with Owly meets a little possum. And it's really cool. And it was really fun to do that in color, because there's a lot of stuff that happens at night with candles and everything like that. And it was really fun to color. And that's the other thing, is that, oh my gosh, coloring these things it just takes forever. It takes forever because, again, I'm doing it all myself. I got help from my mom, actually, who does my flatting. But yeah,
that's the secret to these books, Andy. You really leveled up the game by going to color. It's not just like run-of-the-mill color. It's really, really good stuff.
It's not just that, is that I'm correcting a lot of stuff too, like there's a lot of stuff, and it's little things like the scale of Owly, like it'll be off, and like, or his eyes aren't the right shape, like I can't let that go, which is hard, because you're going through it. And when you're coloring a page, you're spending hours staring at this thing, right? And it is really hard to see mistakes and let them go when you're staring at something for that long. And so it's really fun, though. It's really fun. It's just incredibly time consuming. Time consuming.
In this day and age, when everybody's got a Netflix deal, when's who's optioned Owly for other?
So Owly actually has gotten optioned, but it's a very small production deal, and it's nothing I can really discuss, but it's very small. I got $3,000 for it, so it's not a huge deal. But the whole point is that they try to sell it to other studios, right? So like what I ended up getting is an option deal from a small production company that works with other companies, and so they're trying to make it happen. The people that are involved are amazing and really love it. And we've tried to do this in the past, but when you had mentioned there's a little Owly clip, and we can link to that later or whatever, but I
want to play it right now.
All right, you can play it.
Let me play it right now. You
go for it.
Pal.
Go for it. Oh, I love it so
Wonderful.
much. Yeah, so that's from about 2009, I think, was when that happened, and that I love the music for that so much. That's actually one of my favorite bands called the Weepies, and
Okay.
I just reached out to them and said, "Hey, can I use the song?" And they were like, "Absolutely." And the guy Steve Tannen, he sent me the audio only without the lyrics and everything, and it was just it was
Oh,
amazing.
cool.
It was amazing.
Well,
But
there's a great show on Netflix now. My kids love it. The name is escaping me, but it is completely silent and almost like an abstract world that these creatures,
yeah,
things move around, and like it's getting acceptance. Like people are starting to understand, and especially as they're trying to develop content that plays internationally,
right, right.
not having to dub or redub or whatever. Could you never know, man. Could be a
The
great tool.
sad thing is that world is so different than anything you can possibly imagine. I mean, if you ever go to San Diego Comic-Con and you hear people talking about this and you see a lot of these people that are agents and everything like that, there are so many promises that get made and none of it means anything. It's terrible. But the thing about that one, which was so cool, is that we worked with these little animators that were based in Hawaii that were all Japanese, and they immediately got Owly. They loved it. I don't know if you're familiar with the series Gone, which is a little tiny T-Rex. It's a manga. It's all
Yep.
silent. It's all silent. So that's what they
Thought of
loved.
that one.
They loved Gone. They loved Owly, and they knew exactly what to do, and they put that together. I storyboarded it out, and they animated it. Excuse me, and it was amazing. I still use that when I visit schools and everything like that.
Oh
And
yeah.
because the kids, when they see that, they understand it. If you can show a video and the kids get it immediately. You show them a comic, it takes a while for them to get it. That video is only a minute half long or something like that. It's great for that. But what happened at that time, Netflix was just DVDs by mail, right? So there was no online streaming. Everything was a little tiny box on your computer. The most you could see, so we had PBS, Nickelodeon, and Cartoon Network, and that was pretty much it. Those are the options. And at that time, everything on Cartoon Network and Nickelodeon was gross out humor kind of stuff. And so they all kind of passed on it, and PBS was close. I even actually got to talk with some of the people from Henson Entertainment, and I was really excited, and it just never went anywhere, And the thing is that after a while, they lost interest and it just got put on the shelf. They tried to do more things, but there was actually an offer by the people who did Barney, the dinosaur, and they wanted to make Owly. But if you can imagine, the deal was so bad. It actually said, if I signed it, they would own Owly completely. And I would never, ever be able to publish any more Owly stories, ever. That was the deal. And I would get, for that, I would get $6,000.
I seriously thought you were going to say at least 10
6,000.
times.
Well, I was also going to get a small percentage after all of their expenses were paid. And I don't know if you're familiar with Hollywood accounting, but the way that works is that things like Spider-Man and those movies, they are, if you look at the statements, they break even. And the reason they break even is so that they don't have to pay a lot of the people that were promised
royalties. Of course.
It's horrible. I mean, the guy who wrote Forrest Gump never got any money from the movie, and it's one of the biggest grossing movies of all time. And it was based on his book. I mean, but so that's the thing. And so I had to walk away from that deal, and the animators were flabbergasted. They were like, "Why don't you want to take this deal?" I was like, I want to be able to tell something with him. And the other thing is that there was no guarantee that he would even be called Owly, which is, it doesn't matter, but there was no guarantee that he wouldn't talk. There was no guarantee Wormy would be involved. There was no guarantee he would even be an owl. They were just buying something to hold it. And anyways, I had to say, look, no, I can't take $6,000 for this.
The sad part of that is how many people do you think probably have taken that deal?
There's a lot of people that have taken that deal. And the thing is that you don't hear from them. They never make comics again and they vanish. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of independent comics creators that loved comics and created comics and never made any money on them, or so little that they just got disillusioned and stopped, and I know a lot of them, and it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking. And so,
Andy, that's a sad note to end.
It is. Well, I will say though, so let me we talked about the sales of stuff. So it's a little hard to know how well Owly is doing right now, because Owly #1 was released in February of 2020, right? 1 month later, or less than 1 month later. I don't remember
seeing it in the bookstores during that time.
Nobody was at the bookstores. That's the thing.
Right. My bookstore was closed by law. That's
everything.
Right.
Everything was closed. Every school was closed. There's no gathering of kids for book clubs. There's no gathering of kids for book fairs. They're still happening, but it's not the level it should be at, right? But in the first 6 months, Owly 1 sold 160,000 copies.
Yeah.
That's not like gangbusters, right? But in this first 6 months, I sold more than I did in 10 years with Top Shelf.
Yeah.
And that's just the first book. And so,
do you feel comfortable talking how much more are you compensated? How much better are you compensated?
No, it's the same. The other thing is it's actually less per book. I get less per book. I only get I forget what it is. It's small. It's like 60 cents per book. And then if it's sold for the book clubs and book fairs, I only get I don't know the numbers. So these are just estimates, but something like
it's lower
30. Okay. Yeah, because basically they have to sell it for less, right? They have to sell it for less. But I got a advance, and I get an advance for every book that I get through. So I think it was, I don't remember actually now, but I think I ended up with, $25,000 at the beginning, and then I get 5 for every book, but then I'm also getting paid to color the book. But what that means is that Scholastic owns the color version because they are paying for it. But it's enough to live on, and it's enough to create.
And how good does it feel to get a 10x hit? You know what I mean? Like 10 times.
It's a big deal. But the thing is that you've been working at it for, the first books came out in 2003, right? And I started drawing Owly around 2000, right? So it is 20 years or 20 plus years. And so, all you got to do is stick with it long enough. Eventually you'll make money at it.
Well, but here's the beauty, Al, and I'm sure you've thought about this already, but now you have the backlist that you own the rights to, right? And
well, the thing was about Scholastic is they basically said, look, this isn't a big advance, but what that means is that I've actually, remember I said that sold through, meaning they pay, the books have paid for themselves now. So they haven't lost any money on the books. The books are, it's almost like how you see some movies, they didn't cost as much, so they don't have to make as much to be considered profitable. It's the same thing. So I didn't get paid as much for the books, but they are profitable. And so because of that, they stay in print, and
because it's all gravy now for them.
And the kids will have them. And then, and basically the deal is for 6 books, and I'm hoping that we'll do more, but it's hard to say, especially with the way that the economy is. But
I'm going to prognosticate, Andy, and I'm going to say, based on firsthand experience, once a kid reads one Owly book, they're going to want to read more Owly books.
And so one of the good things is that the books will always be available, unlike when you're buying from an independent publisher who doesn't have the books, they're not in stock,
Yes. Or a comic shop, right? Who if you're lucky, man, I took a chance. I bought 2 copies.
You bought 2. You went deep.
And I can't reorder unless I sell both.
You can't. And not only that, what are the chances? You know how pre-ordering works, and you know
And
how
then
people.
I probably won't reorder it, and it might not be available from top
No, and how
shelf.
many people actually walk into a store and say, "I'd like this comic. I'll wait 2 weeks for it," like, and then
Or
you
I could
get
get
to.
it tomorrow from Amazon.
Right.
Doesn't make sense.
Right. And so, that's the weird thing is that I don't know how many books are sold through Amazon or any of that stuff, but the neat thing is it's all they send you an incredibly detailed accounting of where every book was sold. And so, and the neat thing is they're tracking it too, right? They want to know what they need to do. And that's the difference again in this world of analytics, right? Like in the past, all of that was just in Chris's head. What is being sold, where, how many are being sold, how many did I bring? It was never shared with anybody. We had no understanding of how it worked. And I don't know how those numbers worked because I don't have access to his brain, and it's so nice to see them on paper and really understand like, oh, this is how many were sold here. This is how many were sold in California. This is how many were sold. It's really cool. It's really cool.
Well, so now in Scholastic, a company you never think of as controversial or whatever in the news is just in the last week of the owner. It's a family business, and the owner has passed away, and there's a succession battle going on.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, one of the things I will say about Scholastic is I have never. I've worked with a lot of companies, and there's a lot of love at that place. There's a lot of it really does feel like a family because that's the other thing is that again, with an independent publisher, you have the publisher and you basically, like I would actually FedEx a CD-ROM or a DVD at the time, right? I would FedEx my files to the printer. That was it. I was the last line of like, if there's any mistakes, it was me, right? Now I'm working with a company that has designers and art directors. And even though there's still a lot of work for me to do, I know I'm not in it alone, right? And not only that, they have salespeople, they have regional salespeople, they have promotional people, they
got one of the best bookstore distribution deals around too. Even comic stores can take advantage of it. Get partial returnability, 50% off, and free freight on any Scholastic books direct from Scholastic with very low minimum orders.
That's amazing. See, I didn't even know some of that stuff. I mean, and that's the kind of thing that when you're part of that, it just feels it's relaxing a little bit, it's just less to worry about,
Well, and now you're so poised though now because of the fact though that you have those 5 books in the can,
right,
that can be published. It's not like you have to go scramble and write your next 5 books. You can write your next one and make money on your now over 2 decades of labor.
That's what happens is basically each book that comes out sells the other books, and so a lot of people say, well, book 1 sells more. Well, book 1 sells more because it keeps being bought by the people that are buying book 3 and book 4 and book 5. And
book 1 will always sell the best, right? And then and if it's a growing series, new people are going to keep discovering it, so that volume 1 will always grow.
That's right. It's been out the longest. This is
a much better way. This is a much better note to end.
I wanted it to end on a happy note. I mean, so the thing is that the future is great, and wonderful, but everybody needs to get vaccinated so we can have people back in schools and back in stores and everything like that. So
I'm with you. You heard it, folks. He's Andy's pro-vax. So
pro-vax. Get vaccinated, wear your mask, and go shopping.
Get your kids back from school. Oh, and I heard a new suggestion recently I want to throw out there to all you parents who get that Scholastic list home and check off books for your kids. Some people are throwing in a couple of extra bucks to go to the classroom for the kids that maybe can't afford to buy books. And I think that is a fantastic idea. Everybody just chip in a little bit, help kids read some books.
I saw that. And a huge shout out to one of the biggest proponents of Owly for all this time has been librarians. They are so important for kids that like walk in, they don't know what they're doing. They don't, and the librarian can say, hey, check this out, and it's such a big deal. It's such a big deal. And the reason I mention it is because a lot of times the book clubs and book fairs are run, close to the library or even in the library. That's where they were with my school. And the librarians help out a lot of the kids that need it and everything like that. But without the support of the people that are hand selling it, that means all the comic book retailers that believed in Owly, all of the fans of Owly that would put it in somebody's hands. And, that's what it takes to have that personal and long-lasting success, is that people love it and they want to share it. And that without the good comic book stores, bookstores, librarians, it wouldn't be there, and teachers.
Well, the magic ingredient of all this is creating a work that resonates with your readers and your audience, and you did it in spades with Owly, Andy.
Well,
so thanks so much.
Well, thank you
for
so
taking
much.
the
I
time.
appreciate it.
And
no problem.
Stick around. I play some closing credits. If you want to stick around, if you have a few minutes, we could talk after the broadcast. But if you got to go, I understand.
I'm fine. Were there any questions that came in? Or there anything? Probably not. But
I'm sorry, to the comments. Let me go back in through the comments. We got a few. Got your fan clubs online here. We got Libby.
Oh yeah, the CFL. That was an era. That was that CFL bulb.
Yeah,
that was the
bulb.
It was a very eco-forward thing at the time. Because everybody was
kind of dates you. Yeah, this was in reference to 3D. Some of the people were saying, "Don't make it 3D. We want 2D."
Yeah, well, the thing is that I did not want it to be 3D because at the time, keep in mind, this was 11 years ago. This was 11 years ago, 3D. This was the era of like really bad 3D. And I couldn't believe what they came up with. So the funny thing is it actually holds up pretty well. It actually holds up pretty well.
I would punch it up a little bit, but not much.
Absolutely. But keep in mind, I mean, like, can you imagine the computing power it took even to render that stuff out?
Yes.
So
we're doing it in real time right here with the $1 Million Comics Cam these days.
That's right. Well, hey, nowadays, not everybody has $1 Million Comics Cam,
True. Well, we don't all have great deals with Scholastic like you, Andy. And unfortunately, I don't, if I want to keep the $1 Million Comics Cam running, I got to get back to work at my
gotta get paid.
Thank you again. Thank you so much for taking the time. We had a few months going back and forth trying to set this up, and I'm super glad. I like, this is one of my favorite interviews of all time.
Well, thank you so much. And at any time, if you got questions or you have anything else that comes up, I don't mind talking about it. Oh, I can mention one thing real quick.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people don't get to see this, is that I have it's hard to show, but I just want to show a little bit. Let's see if this shows up. So this is this is like how I draw Owly, all these sketches, thumbnail-y sketches. And this is actually book 6. There's actually some pages from book 6, but this is, so they're all hand drawn, they're all hand drawn with ink and everything like that. And all of the black and everything, that's all Hellboy influence. That's all Hellboy influence. But I will say that is one of the things that is hard with Scholastic, is that when all that black becomes a real pain in the butt. And I end up having to digitally erase a lot of the black, and it's hard because, again, it's time consuming. I can't just say, hey, take all the black away, because it would take everything away. So
I'm so glad we revealed, if nothing else today, the Hellboy Owly connection.
Oh yeah, it's big. It's big. It's big.
I love it. Well, Andy, thanks a lot. Thanks again. I want to hit you
so much.
Man, there's a bunch of other cartoonists over at Scholastic that I would love to be able to try and get a hold of, or even Scholastic, someone over there.
I think a lot of them, it's through their agent and everything like that. They all coordinate all that kind of stuff. Nobody is inaccessible. They're all super friendly. I think that's the neat thing about it. Most of them are cartoonists that did tons of comic book shows before they did that. And the funny thing is that after you have books like that, you do signings. You don't sit at the table all day, but I never minded doing that kind of stuff. So,
I forgot. I made this for you, Andy, too. I forgot.
Oh, look at that. That's adorable.
Yeah, I found this old newsstand.
I love Owly being held between them like that. That's great.
Man, well, thanks again, Andy. We'll definitely bringing you back again sometime.
No problem. Let me know if there's anything I can do for you in the meantime.
I sure will. Thanks again. Hey, and thank you for coming checking this out. What wasn't that cool? Wasn't Andy cool? Even cooler than I thought he was going to be, to be honest. Owly is a fantastic book. I'm telling you firsthand, not just as a dad who reads it to his kids again and again and again till I'm almost want to strangle that Owly plush, but also as a retailer who sold stacks of these things. I'm saying of any of the all ages material that I used to carry, any of that material that I used to carry, Owly was one of my all-time best sellers. No two ways about it. Like stacks and stacks of dough that I made off of Owly. So I appreciate you for that. Andy, thank you very much. Thank you guys all for checking out the show, watching, subscribing. Hey, if you like this, please consider right now. Think about it. Thumbs up. It's right there. It's within reach. You can click it. And just that little bit helps us so much with the YouTube algorithmic gods. You can't even believe it. Okay, so who's coming up next time? I don't know. And I don't even know when the next show will be. I'm working on more episodes of Mother Box. If you had a chance to watch the Mother Box pilot, and I thank all couple hundred of you out there maybe who did, it was fun and fantastic. What's Mother Box, you ask?
There's a game. Beyond it is another dimension. A dimension of words. A dimension of pictures. Journey into a wondrous land whose boundaries are that of imagination. There's a signpost up ahead. Your next stop? The Mother Box.
Yeah, Mother Box. It's the comic book game show from another dimension. I'm working on new episodes of that and new technology. In fact, some of the stuff you're seeing here in the all-new neighborhood of make-believe virtual set is thanks to the new technology that I developed when I created Mother Box, working on licensing that to some other shows and doing some fun stuff with it. So come on back, subscribe, check out some of my new interviews. I got coming up another top shelf person. I got an agreement. I don't have the date firm yet. Eddie Campbell. Yeah, that Eddie Campbell. From Hell Eddie Campbell. Alec Eddie Campbell. Bacchus Eddie Campbell. That Eddie Campbell is gonna do the show. He has agreed. It was really easy to get him to agree. I'm so excited. You can't even believe it. So right now I'm going to close with the closing credits. Make sure to stick around because at the end we've got a cameo, little closing cameo. And I got one that's appropriate for our neighborhood of make-believe action that we've had going on today. So come back and check us out next time.